Hi guys, my name is Ari. I'm the bookish freaking MB and welcome to Boricua Reads. I am so glad to be back. Thank you guys for sticking around and waiting for me to actually upload something. I know it's been something like a year almost, but I am so glad to be back, and I am glad to be back on this particular review because this is going to be my first attempt at a joint review. It's going to be two books by Akwaeke Emezi. Of course, I would not review these together if they were not somehow connected, because of course, why do them apart when you can do them together and make those connections and bring up those predictions and all of this in our discussion. So I will be talking about these two books in a few. The two books that I will be covering in this video are Freshwater and Dear Senthuran. Of course, y'all know I love Akwaeke Emezi. I thoroughly enjoyed Vivek Oji, and now I'm going to cover these two because they're so interconnected that if you try to separate them, the connections that you make between them are lost. So I decided to do these together. Before I start my review, I like to put trigger warnings into my videos so that people can make informed decisions on whether or not they can handle the content. And it will also help them to make an informed decision on whether or not they want to continue with this video or even read the books. The trigger warnings for Freshwater and Dear Senthuran are rape, suicide, self-injury, domestic violence, and sexual abuse of children. I am also going to add two more trigger warnings for detailed descriptions of top surgery and hysterectomy. The hysterectomy is more so Dear Senthuran and not Freshwater, but they still have detailed descriptions of surgical procedures. I am letting you know this so that you are aware and you can make an informed decision on whether or not you want to read the books. Both Freshwater and Dear Senthuran are drenched in Igbo ontology, and they both document a life that forces us to acknowledge indigenousness. There are a few noticeable differences between Freshwater and Dear Senthuran. Freshwater is a semi-autobiographical novel that has a more fantastical approach to Akwaeke Emezi telling their story. Whereas Dear Senthuran is a memoir that is written in the form of letters to various people that they care about. Friends, family, acquaintances, lovers, just various people in their life that they care about. Another difference between Freshwater and Dear Senthuran is that Freshwater was actually published a while ago. I think it was published about 3 years ago or so. And it only takes us up to a certain point in their experience. It only takes us up to a specific event in their life. So it stops there, but Dear Senthuran gives us more recent experiences, newer things that have happened in their life, and it informs us on more of their God selves going through this life. And I really appreciate that Dear Senthuran was more raw. It was more accessible for us. And especially as a non-binary person, it actually documents the non-binariness of the author while also explaining to us that labeling themselves is a very human thing. And because they're a god, technically they don't have to label themselves for humans to know. But with all of that said, Dear Senthuran definitely cuts to the bone of a lot of their experiences, whereas Freshwater was more of a fantasy world, which led us to believe that Freshwater was a commentary on mental health, when really it was them declaring their identity to the world. In both books, Akwaeke describes their struggles and their experiences being embodied. And in more than one instance, there are times where they are preparing for suicide, keeping pills and things like that in their apartment just in case they feel the need to have it. And throughout both books, the friends of Akwaeke always ask them, "Hey, is this a part of the suicide plan? Is this what you need? If you need it, I'll still help you, but is this a part of the suicide plan? I need to know." And it's like Akwaeke always had a plan in place just in case they succeeded. And honestly, yeah, it's considerate to have, a will and a lawyer and all of these things in place in order to, take care of your loved ones after you're gone. Of course, it's considerate. But another thing is, it's crazy how they all automatically, when they asked for a lawyer or asked for a way to write their will or whatever like that, they automatically knew to ask this question because they understand the pain and the suffering that they're going through because of their embodiment. I do think that they've become content and they've found comfort in their little relationship that they have with Yeshua. And of course, Yeshua to them is not like a higher being or anything like that. No, they look at Yeshua as their equal. They are friends with Yeshua, or in some sense, they think of Yeshua as a brother, a big brother. And I think that having that relationship with him is kind of a comfort to them. And also, they've kind of come to this place where they're content. They know that they're not going to be able to leave this earth until their work is done. So they are here, they're doing their work, and when it's done, the embodiment will be over. So I think that they've become content, or they've kind of, just accepted it and said, okay, I'm not going to fight this embodiment anymore. I'm just going to do what I need to do, and then I can be done. And that's basically how they're looking at a lot of these things. They're like, okay, I'm doing this, and once the last word is said, I'm gone. And it's just a really just finite way of looking at things, I think, because they know they're slated for death. They know that their entities have to eventually go back to their godmother. They know this. And when it's all over, once the work is done, They know that they can go back to the spiritual realm where they came from. So I think part of their contentment also is the fact that they found somewhere where they can be themselves and they can spread themselves out through all of the rooms of their house. Their house is named Shiny, the God House. And they have their cat and their garden and all of these things that help them to feel a little bit happier, a little bit more content, a little bit more comfortable in their skin. And honestly, I'm glad that they're becoming in tune with their embodiment and not fighting it anymore. Also, it's I think that it's amazing that they have so much work already done. I think they said the last time I saw them in an interview that they had 17 books already written, just sitting in Scrivener's, chilling, waiting to be optioned for publication. And that is amazing. So I'm just glad and I'm looking forward to all of this work to be published. I have to say that Freshwater covers a lot of their traumas. It actually covers a huge chunk of their life. I think it covers from their birth, well, even before their birth, when the entities were actually floating in and out of their mother and flying around and watching over everyone. It covers a lot. It covers from even before their birth to all the way up to when they were in their master's program and when they went back to Nigeria to pay respects to Allah, who is their mother. So when we're talking about Freshwater, we know about some of these traumas, and we know how some of the traumas have actually affected them. Like their rape actually brings forth the beast self, Saint Vincent and Asugara. And, you know, basically a lot of these things that happen that lead up to Asugara and Saint Vincent showing up are just tallies on the board. Basically, just there were many things that led up to that point. And as far as, you know, Asugara is the, you know, sexually promiscuous beast self who doesn't really care about humans. She just goes around doing what she wants and not caring about anyone. And then on the other hand, you have Saint Vincent, who is more masculine. Um, this is when you see the character beginning to change, beginning to flow from one gender to another, just embodying different gender roles. And you know, you can tell when Saint Vincent has taken over, and you can tell when Asugara has taken over. So I think Freshwater actually covers a lot. But what Dear Senthuran does is it puts a lot of those events and those experiences into perspective because it gives us more detail. It gives us more of an answer to all of the questions that we had when reading Freshwater. So I think that Dear Senthuran just takes off. It picks up where Freshwater left off, gives us that and more, because it also covers a lot of the new experiences that Akwaeke Emezi has had in the last three 3 years. Yeah, 3 years. So it covers the 3 years, and it also covers the master's program and the years leading up to Freshwater, the book tour, and the publishing of Freshwater, and also the publishing of Pet and the death of Vivek Oji. And it just sums everything up and confirms a lot of the things that we were already thinking about when we were finished with Freshwater. And also, the predictions are actually confirmed to have happened from Freshwater. So we are literally seeing the bridge being completed between the two books. And what's amazing is that they've done it in such a literary way that it's so complete a picture. And we get everything that we were anticipating when they announced that there was going to be a memoir. In Freshwater, it briefly tells us about their time in a master's program. In Freshwater, they never tell us how that concluded or whether or not they actually made it through the master's program. But in their Senthuran, they actually tell us about their experience in that program. Apparently, they became depressed. They sometimes stopped going to class, but they had already finished writing Freshwater. And when they told their cohorts that they had finished writing the book and they were looking for publishers to publish it, they were literally shunned, shut out completely. They stopped communicating with them. When they went through surgery, they didn't even check on them. They were completely shut out. Then they finally said, you know what? I don't need a master's program to publish a book. I can do this on my own. They left the master's program and went looking for bids on Freshwater. And apparently they were expecting some big sum, some huge payout for their advance, and they only got $10,000 for it. And because of that, they spent some time being a nomad, going from one place to another, meeting different people, and they got tired of being the nomad, of being, tossed from one place to another. And that's when they went ahead and published Pet. So as we're reading Dear Senthuran, we're getting more of these stories. I think that they elaborate on a lot of their experiences that were covered in small little slivers on Freshwater. And the in-depth explanations of what they went through are kind of needed. I think that we were looking for those resolutions, and we did get them when reading Dear Senthuran. So I do commend them for actually giving us the answers to a lot of those questions, because I think for me, I was at a loss at the end of Freshwater, and I was like, well, that's it? That's all we get? I want to know more. And honestly, I am so glad that we got some of the answers to the questions that we had after reading Freshwater. It was kind of irking in the back of my mind, those questions. And finally we got answers to those. So I'm just very glad we got the resolutions to a lot of those issues that were raised in Freshwater and answers to the questions that we had as we were finishing Freshwater. So someone asked me how I feel about Akwaeke Emezi holding themselves as a god. One thing I'm going to say is it is their experience. They are an Obanje. They have identified themselves as such, and my opinion doesn't matter here. They are who they say they are. I am not here to identify anyone or try to define someone or perceive someone. No, they are who they say they are. And yes, they are okay. Because someone asked me that too. They're just living in their truth and becoming the embodied being that they want to become. And honestly, that's beautiful. I need people to stop looking at things through such a Eurocentric lens and start looking at things less linearly. Also, we need to begin to stop ignoring our indigenousness for the sake of being socially accepted. Proximity to white doesn't work for us, and respectability politics doesn't work either. So when we start going back and looking at our ancestors and beginning to embrace some of those things that make us us, I think things would be a lot easier for us to understand. I honestly started embracing my multiplicity and, looking into Yoruba Ifa as a practitioner, and honestly, I feel more acceptance in that than I did in the Christian church. And that's just my experience. So when we're talking about Akwaeke Emezi embracing who they are, they're not crazy. They're just living their truth. And if you can't accept that and you want to sit here and label them as crazy or schizophrenic or anything like that, then that's your deal. I mean, to each their own. But I do not label anyone, will never start labeling anyone. And when someone says they are who they say they are, that's who they are. I mean, it's a no-brainer here. Okay? And that's all I wanted to say about this book. And honestly, y'all know whatever Akwaeke writes, I'm here to read. I'm probably going to be buying most of their future works just because I just love the way that they write. And the last 3 books that I've read that they wrote were amazing, and I look forward to more amazingness. So yeah, I'm thoroughly looking forward to all of this other stuff that they've announced. They actually dropped a cover for their new book today, so I'm really excited for that. Okay guys, thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and watch out for any new things that I decide to upload in the next few weeks. Thanks again, and until next time, peace.